Hi, Tom here with this week's Circle Line Art School video, how to draw the impossible 3D triangle in 3 different ways. For these 3 optical illusions, I shall start with the second drawing, as its first stage is exactly the same as the first drawing. So the first step in this drawing is to draw a triangle with equal sides, and then to draw another triangle inside the first, letting the corners overlap. The gap between the lines in the first triangle and the inner triangle need to be parallel and quite close together. Once you have drawn this, the next step is to draw another triangle in the same way, but this time in the center of the triangles that we've just drawn, still with the corners crossing over or overlapping. Next, we need to join up the inner corners of the first triangle to make a little triangle in each corner. That is it, but next we need to darken some of these lines. So I'll start by darkening these 2 outside lines. And next I'll darken this middle line towards the front of the triangle, and then I'll darken the middle line on the right hand side, and then the middle line on the left hand side. And now I'll darken the outside line on the left hand side, and then the inside line on the left hand side, watching how the lines touch each other and how far they go along. And then I'll just do the top line of the 3 lines at the bottom, taking it all the way to the dark line in the middle on the right, and then I'll join up the other line on the right as well. And so now we have created the optical illusion that you can see on the left without shading it in. But for this one I'm going to create a series of cubes, starting here. So the first step to create the cubes on this triangle is to look at the angle at the corners of the triangle and repeat them, leaving a gap to make a cube, so it looks like a sugar cube. And then, along each of the lengths of the triangle, we're going to repeat that again, but each time we do a sugar cube cube, we're going to do a double line so that the 2 cubes aren't touching each other, but there's a little space in between them. So I'm not really counting, I'm just working it out by eye, seeing how many cubes I can put along one side, and then repeating it along the other side. Now again, must make sure that you leave little gaps in between each cubes. And then I'll repeat it on the third side of the triangle as well, looking very carefully how each one of these edges has a different angle for these lines. So that's the next step. And now looking very carefully at where these double lines are, I'm going to read them across as they go around the corner, as it were, of the bar of the bottom of the triangle. So these ones all go at a certain angle, so whichever angle it is, you can read it from the corner line that you've got in your triangle and repeat that. And then just where the 2 lines overlap, there's another little small line that just goes behind it, just to make it into a cube shape. Now again, I repeat that on the right hand side, this time looking carefully at how these lines sort of drop down as they go around the corner of the tube-like shape. Again, just knocking off the little corners on the left and right of each of the cubes to make it have another facet, another face on one side. Then just checking out the top here, make sure that's okay, and then I'll repeat the process again for a third time on the left hand side of the triangle. Again, reading them around so that it creates that illusion of a sort of chunky 3D cube-like shape. And again, knocking off the little corners to make the cubes work really well. Now at this stage, I just need to look carefully and erase some of the edges. So the 3 original corners we don't need of the large triangle. And then there are some small little tiny shapes which we don't need anymore. The next stage after this is to go over all the lines again, but this time using a fine black pen. For this stage I'll just speed up the video a little bit, but I won't speed it up too much so you can actually see and follow along, so that you can get used to this illusion, which seems quite complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually quite simple. When drawing over the lines with a pen, it's quite a good idea perhaps to see them as cubes, but also to see them as a continuous line of cubes so that they all have unity on their outside edges, so they don't sort of wobble around so much. I make them quite sharp, so I'm just tend to go along one line as like a broken line, all the sides of one cube, and then the other two lines, and then joining the lines that go crossways. So it almost looks like a chevron sort of shape, just so that you haven't got the individual cubes, but you've got cubes in a set that go along. So just finishing it off on the left hand side here, trying to make each cube look as even as possible. And then after this stage, I'll just use a 4B pencil after I just cleaned it up a little bit with an eraser. And with the 4B pencil, I need to choose one side of each cube which is going to be dark, one side that's going to be a medium tone, and one side that's not going to be toned at all. So I'll start off with the right hand side and tone all the tops of the right hand cubes as dark as a 4B pencil will go. And once I've done that, I need to think about where the dark sides on the bottom will be, and they'll be the same on the top of each of the cubes along the bottom length of the triangle. But on the left hand side it'll be slightly different. It's still on the top of the cubes, but we can't really see too much of the top of the cubes because they're hidden by the other cubes which are above them. So that's all the darker ones. So I'm choosing to do the mid-tone along the bottom of all the cubes along the bottom line, and then that will read across on the left hand side on the right of the cubes on the left hand side, and then it will be a sort of hidden facet on the right hand side will also be the mid-tone. And so there we have an impossible triangle in cubes. The last triangle is drawn in exactly the same way as the first two triangles, at least at the first stage. So we start with an equilateral triangle, and then we draw an inner triangle which overlaps at its corners, and then another inner triangle that overlaps again at the corners. And then we erase the small triangles on the outside edge, and then we find the halfway points along each of the sides of the triangles in the middle bar, and then we join those up with a line, creating another triangle like an upside down triangle in the center, and that goes to the middle lines of the outside triangle. Next we draw another triangle which goes slightly bigger than this, which goes to the outside lines of the triangle. So now we have two inverted or upside down triangles in the center of our impossible triangle, the outside one. The next step is to draw a third triangle, and this time it goes into the center lines, the inner lines of the original impossible triangle. Now there are quite a lot of lines here, but that's again all the lines that we'll need. But we need to work out very carefully which lines of these we need to keep and where exactly each of these lines stop and each of the lines start. And I think the best way to do that is just to look very carefully at this drawing as I draw it along, and you can follow along the lines that I make dark and the lines that I don't make dark, and hopefully you'll be able to see which lines I erase and which lines need to be darker, and that will create the illusion. Once all the lines are in place, then we'll just do the simple shading which we've done on the first two triangles, which is just some block shading of three tones, light, medium and dark. I hope you enjoyed drawing these three triangles. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Circle Line Art School. There are now over 100 different videos, and there's a new video each week. Again, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.